Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Solar Astrology Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Amia.
And I'm Hambra. Hello.
Hello. We are recording our Scorpio episodes on Monday, November 13th at 10:32 a.m. And we're also recording this right just as we had the new moon in Scorpio. So we're once again very much in tune with the energies.
Yes, indeed, it's very fitting. And it feels like a perfect day because where I live, it's kind of raining. So it's raining. I see the brown leaves, and definitely Scorpio is in the air.
Yes, and like the fogginess and all of that.
Exactly. And yeah, this sign, well, just to say the basics, it's a yin sign, is a water and fixed sign. It's also the second water sign we meet and the third fixed sign that we meet through the wheel of the zodiac. It's also ruled by Mars. And we just want to say in advance that we we do practice ancient Hellenistic astrology, so we don't consider Pluto as the ruler of Scorpio, and we use a traditional ruler, which is Mars. And Scorpio is also the full of the moon. And we have a wonderful quote by Rhetorius that he asks, in this passage, basically, he tries to explain the essential dignities of the planets. And here he goes and says, and again, why is that the place where the moon is exalted, there nothing is depressed? And where the moon is depressed, there nothing is exalted. We say that because it is the moon, it is the fortune of all, and he who fortune exalts, no one may depress, while he whom fortune depresses, no one is able to exalt. So basically, what it's saying is that the moon kind of represents the fortune of everything. So, and another planet cannot be sort of lucky, if you want, when the symbol of fortune is depressed. So it's very interesting. And Scorpio is also the detriment of Venus.
Yes. And I think we can just to cycle back to the Taurus episode, because this is kind of the continuation of that, um, because that is the sign where the moon is exalted.
Yeah.
So the moon does very well in Taurus. And this is the comparison that Pretorius is making in this example, because in Taurus we find no planet that is in its fall, and in Scorpio we have no planet that is in exaltation.
Exactly. And it's basically for the same reason. So the moon represents fortune. So it cannot harm anybody else, basically, which I think it's so fascinating. And indeed, also, if we think about the season of Scorpio, at least in the northern hemisphere, it's literally the middle of fall, the middle of autumn, and it's the darkest time of the year. It's the dark of the dark. And, leaves are dead, nature is asleep, and, it is quite a symbolic moment for decay, because that's what's happening in nature, decay. And yeah, it's obviously Mars-like. Certainly Mars-like, like Mars can love decay and death. But if you also think about the trees losing their leaves, and you think about the sign of Scorpio that always wants to get deep and know the truth, it feels as if Scorpio wants the naked truth as the season of Scorpio wants the naked trees. It's a nice analogy just to explain that Scorpio goes very deep, and Scorpio feels the need for truth because in this season, everything is changing. Everything is dying, basically. And when you're faced with death, you want to find something that it's not changeable. You want to find something that is permanent. And what is more permanent than the truth? Scorpio needs the truth because it gives a sense of safety, we could say.
Yeah, it's again, I mean, the Mars, like the yin Mars quality is so much associated with like the raw and primal nature of things. And in a way, Scorpio so just wants to know like the raw and bare truth of
Yeah.
of the nature of things, of humanity, of what it means to be human in all the facets, usually also a lot of the ugly facets,
Hmm.
which many of us get in touch when it's Scorpio season. It's usually a very harsh season for many people to go through. That's because ironically we really like to cover it up, right? Like a lot
Yeah.
of people don't like to think or feel these things, which then yeah, unironically, like it starts to express itself in very yeah, a lot of times horrible ways, you know. If I think of when like shadow aspects or things we deny or repress or just, you know, don't even dare to look at, it starts to it has to come out some way, right? And that's usually what Scorpio season brings forth much of the times, where we kind of yeah, get in touch of like a lot of the harsh and ugly sides of what it means
Yeah.
to be a human in the human experience.
Yeah, with death and decay, obviously, I do agree. And it's funny. Obviously depends on where you live, but it's basically the time for taking vitamin D if you have seasonal depression. It's the Scorpio season because it's the darkest.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, um, so yeah, that is very funny. But yeah, you know, um, indeed, like Scorpio season gets us in touch with the painful sides of being human and being alive, like loss and decay and death. And as we said, is a form of safety, being in touch with the truth. And Scorpio is so much about feeling safe and therefore being on the defensive side. And Scorpio is very good at it. He's always attentive for potential danger, and it always makes sure to be protected. Sorry, and it's not the case that it is represented. It is the sign of the Scorpion, and you know, um, it's kind of like the Scorpion is really onto the defense as an animal. It doesn't hurt you to hurt you, it's just hurting you for defense purposes, and it can be kind of lethal. So it is the nature of Scorpio, and Scorpio is not attacking for harming you, it's just attacking because he wants to feel safe. And it's Mars
Yeah.
like, so it can be very dangerous.
Yeah, it's for very self preserving reasons.
Hmm.
And this is exactly why Scorpio wants to, you know, it needs that safety. And that's why oftentimes you hear things about, you know, Scorpios being mistrusting or paranoid or, you know, all these things that gets thrown at it. And there's obviously some truth to it, like with all stereotypes. But it's really because of the reason that Scorpio knows that it is intense, and that's why it needs to guard. Like it doesn't just want to let anyone inside.
Hmm.
Um,
Indeed, it
it,
could be
it
harmful.
yeah, it could be harmful, worst harmful for themselves, you know,
Hmm.
or for the people around them. And
Yeah.
it knows, it kind of knows that not everybody wants to go that deep, and that is totally fine. And that's why it kind of just needs to really evaluate carefully It's like, you know, it's like what I'm thinking if you go like the airport check, you know, where you're like, okay, we need to scan all of this. We need to see what's in the
Yeah,
in the
that's very Scorpio
suitcases
like.
because you know, it could be very dangerous if something inside is that could be harmful. So Scorpio is very much like that, you know, when they judge people and stuff like that. And that's also how you know, you get the stereotype of like, okay, Scorpio seeming cold, but like once you get to know them, they're like super kind human beings. um there's definitely like some truth to that, but they're also very, you know, Mars is a very devotional sign. It's a very like I will that's what kind of what Mars and Venus have in common, or even though of course the devotion comes from a bit like different sides. But Mars is somebody that is very like I will give up myself for this mission. I will give my everything for this goal. And because that is so much of, you know, like a yin Mars, Scorpio wants to make sure that if they devote themselves to something, they can
Mhm.
really trust that person or that
Yeah.
institution or the mission or whatever they want to give themselves fully to. So that's why they need to really establish carefully because they know once they go in, they go all in and they want it to
That is a
be worth
good
it.
point. That is a good point. And yeah, you know, like Scorpio is hyper aware of the dangers, and you know, when you are hyper aware, then it's the moment. It's the moment in which you want to feel safer. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword in a way.
it is, and I think it's also fun because you know, if you think about it, it's from Libra season to Scorpio season. But, you know, Libra is way more optimistic. And and Scorpio is way more realistic. It's like in our notes, we wrote that basically Scorpio is autumn without rose-colored glasses
Yes.
that maybe we can have in Libra. You know, because Mars sees the raw reality, because raw reality can be a threat and a danger. And you know, I think we said it multiple times by this time. You know, it's hyper aware of the danger, whereas Libra is kind of more innocent about it, we could say. Or Libra evaluates more, but doesn't feel like, okay, this thing could threat my life or threat the life of the people that I love. It's just in the evaluation process. That's the Libra side.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just, you know, Scorpio's like, oh shit, um, now I made these considerations and now I realized that these things are dangerous. And it's also nice because it's the, you know, as we said, it's the opposite sign of Taurus. And I think I have a special relationship with this duality. And I something that I really like about it is that it feels like if Scorpio is the decay, Taurus is the ultimate growth because, as we said in the Taurus episode, it's you know everything is growing. It's spring. It's the middle of the spring. It's the middle of an increase of life, and Scorpio is the middle of the decrease of life. So they've kind of like all of the polarities, but this one especially to me feels like the yin yang symbol. And if you think that uh, you know, if you think that you are aware of the fact that you die one day, then life gains more value and become more enjoyable. Whereas if you live life without realizing that it will end at one point, then life becomes kind of meaningless, like becomes kind of passive. But the having both the Taurus and the Scorpio lesson is a really good thing because when you are aware that life will end, you can enjoy more life. You can enjoy more what you have if you realize that, you know, it's not to give for granted that you have these gifts and this life. And It's very beautiful.
Yeah, it's very much about the inevitable life, death, life cycle, which oftentimes is also more metaphorical or symbolical because it
Hmm.
constantly happens. And it's the same thing we can see in nature, where we see,
Yeah.
you know, the leaves fall and are decomposed by the microorganisms. And that in turn helps the plants and the flowers that are going to bloom in Taurus season grow. So
Yeah.
it's like we need that part so that the other part works. And
Indeed.
it's the same for us humans. We need both phases in our life um, to be able to be fully human. Like the letting go and the cutting off and the decomposing and like the stillness and the introversion is just as important as when things come back to life again.
Yeah.
And it's so important. I mean, when I think back on my life, I think I can appreciate both phases for their own lessons and blessings in that sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's the whole life of, life and death. And as you were saying with the microorganisms, is so fascinating because without them, that they consume basically death matter, death organisms, the ground wouldn't have the nutrients to be fertile again. And this what is telling to us is that, you know, um, life kind of needs death to exist because everything you eat, even animal products, but also vegetable products, all of what you eat is made of cells. So everything you eat was alive. So, you know, it's death sustains life in this sense. Because everything of a plant is alive, everything you eat is just like people nowadays think it's only animals, but it's actually all of the food comes from cells. So
Mhm.
still, you're eating organisms, and yeah, it's just fascinating. You know, we need that life to continue living.
Yes, and talking about food, if we also look at the organ rulership, we also hinted at that in the Taurus episode, but I just want to repeat it again because Taurus rules the throat and like what we take in, like so
Hmm.
the food, right? And then Scorpio rules over our bottom parts and really the physical waste. So
Like,
again, even our body is a reminder of how we constantly need to like decompose, essentially.
yes, indeed. And we mentioned it before that, it's kind of one of the most misunderstood signs, and we do think it's because modern astrology makes the association with Pluto and with the eighth house. But, as you might have understood at this point, the transformative qualities of Scorpio are not really dependent on Pluto. They are more dependent on the natural process that happens during the Scorpio season. And it is inherently transformative because, as we said, without this process of decay, life couldn't continue existing. So that's the transformative side of Pluto. And it really does make sense. And also, if you think about the sex, like many associate Scorpio with sex. Well, sex at the end of the day is what we do to reproduce ourselves, and the act of reproduction, it is transformative for both the body of a woman, but especially for what happens to the embryo. Um, and I would say that Mars gives the strength for undergoing a deep transformation. Like really, Mars in Scorpio is the strength for a deep transformation. And well, especially in Scorpio, not on the sex side, but it's the strength of going through shit and shitty periods,
Mhm.
feeling emotions that are painful, like grief or just anxiety or just sadness, and facing those emotions because when you face them, well, the process is painful, obviously, but afterwards, you know, you end up being another person. So the fact of facing difficult emotion is transformative itself, and that's that that needs strength. That is why Mars is ruling this sign of the year.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking of how in tarot the Tower card is associated with Mars. And Mars is a very quick planet in that sense. And it's how these, the small moments where something
Mhm.
happens and it alters who we are forever. Like
Yeah.
it takes one instance and we don't know it then exactly, but it changes us gradually and we become completely different persons. Again, maybe in Scorpio, it's more about the harsher things in life that require grief or losing things. But just as much, they're also, like finding new love or what stuff like that. That also changes you forever.
Yeah.
So it's not just the bad things. And I just wanted to quickly go back to like the sexual parts and just to mention that also the reproductive, isn't that fascinating? It's called reproductive organs are also associated with Scorpio in medical astrology.
Hmm.
So we have it there as well. And again, since it's a yin feminine sign, and you know, we have a womb, and
As a
so
woman.
there's as a woman, yeah, there's like this cycle that also goes on every month where we shed blood. It's
Yeah.
the womb regenerating itself. It's a necessary blood shedding that needs to happen for the womb to do its job, essentially. And I
Yeah, to
think that is
carry
also
life.
so exactly, and that is so much of what again Mars and Scorpio is all about, and the transformative qualities which often get associated with Pluto. And there's definitely truth to that. Pluto has to do with transformation too. It's just not entirely the same one. Pluto
Exactly.
transformations usually take a lot longer since Pluto is very, very slow moving. Um, so that's kind of the difference. Totally, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. And we were also talking about the fact that, Mars kind of rules Scorpio because we need the strength to go through these processes. And it's also kind of the strength of the nature to persist the harsh condition of the fall and the winter.
Mhm.
Because you need strength to survive and wait till spring. But what happens in spring? Spring begins with Aries season. And Aries, it's and another strength is the strength of finding the energy that we stored and grow them. As we said in the Aries episode, Aries is a big amount of energy that initiates life.
Mhm.
And if you think about it, it's kind of a process. Mars in Scorpio stores the energy, gives you the strength to go through the harsh condition of winter and autumn. And then you can let this energy go out and express themselves in Aries season. And it is just so beautiful. And also, if we want to compare again Scorpio and Aries, it's like Scorpio is a feminine sign, so it's much more about slow processes. We said that feminine signs are slower, and it's more about endurance because you have to endure to the fall and winter season. And Aries is a Scorpio yin sign, so it's much more fast and quick. And it's obviously a fire sign. And it's more immediate, like let go all of the energy in one moment, and poof, suddenly all of the flowers have blown. So it's very beautiful, this comparison, and I think it makes so much sense. Also, if you look at the Scorpio Aries, not only like different Mars sign, but also as a succession, because it kind of does make sense. It's different times of the year when we need this amount of strength that only Mars can give us.
Yeah, it's in a tiny way, but similar to Taurus, but where it's also like it reminds us of life, death. But I feel like the Mars comparison between Scorpio and Aries is about destruction versus creation, and which is also both needed. And yeah, when I mean, sadly, there is like a lot of very horrible destruction, right? But
Mm-hmm.
so much of that also has to do with then being able to create new things. So I think it's both about the necessary part of each thing, whatever it comes with. And what we also see a difference between both of them. We're kind of expanding the comparison right now, but the fact that the luminaries, the sun and the moon. So the moon does not do well in Scorpio, but the sun does very well in Aries. And
Yeah.
that is a big difference between both of these Mars signs and why they are different in their
Yeah.
respective ways.
Yeah, indeed. And while we were talking about this in our notes, Amia made a wonderful and genius joke that, those are both important placement for the lumin Aries.
Yeah.
The luminaries, like Aries the sign. Yeah, I found it genial. Like, I mean, I have to give it credit to you for this one.
Yeah, we had to put it here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but that was kind of essential. We have a list of priorities at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, okay, yeah. And I think also with talking about the luminaries, but we're gonna circle back to Scorpio, which we haven't talked yet so much about that. About the what it means that the moon is in detriment in Scorpio, which also kind of leads us a bit to, the downsides of Scorpio or why they are expressed in the way they are expressed. And it's really, if you think about I mean, we already said that the moon rules over our fortune, and then the water signs themselves
Hmm.
rule over, memories and experiences and circumstances and the environments and all these things. And so you have a fixed water sign that has its detriment in the moon. That
Hmm.
is difficult emotion
Yeah, well,
that is very hard to process.
yeah, it's the detriment of the moon, indeed. Yeah.
Exactly. And the fact that, why Scorpio has such a hard time letting go. It's stuck emotion that it's very hard to release,
Hmm.
because it's like memory that is stuck,
Yeah,
and where like the vengeance maybe comes in of like, oh yeah, like this happened there, and like therefore like I need to get revenge on this person or something like that.
yeah, indeed. And also the fact that, the moon especially does represent environmental circumstances. And the moon is in fall in Scorpio. So, you know, I think we can see with many Scorpios that, well, it's kind of a stereotype, but they are into conspiracy theories. And why is that? It's because the moon, so the environmental circumstances, are kind of distorted when you are too much in conspiracy theories. Your view of the circumstances around you, it's not really clear, or you are overly suspicious. And that's what's, I would say, that is why lots of Scorpio end up being in conspiracy theories or having kind of trust issues or paranoia about what people say, because they don't trust the environment around them. And that is inherent of this essential dignity, I would say.
Yeah, and also the fact that again, it's hard to overcome the emotions because it's so easy, with the water signs, it can feel like the emotions are the actual reality, when really
Mm-hmm.
it's just like a reaction towards something that happened, again, a memory or a sensory experience that is coming up. But in that moment, and again, we have Mars, which is so much about survival and self-perseverance and everything. And as soon as Scorpio feels a threat, it can just react, again, in all these ways, which might not be true.
Yeah.
And this is kind of what conspiracy theories are, about oneself or about the environment or things that are going on. um
Yes, indeed.
Definitely.
And if we also talk about the downsides of Scorpio, well, one is pretty obvious since what we just said is like trust issues, being overly suspicious. But we can also have possession and being revengeful. And I would like to address the part of being possessive. Um, and I think it is because, as we well stressed at this point, you know, Mars is hyper aware of loss. And it, the fact that it is hyper aware doesn't mean it likes to lose things. So when it finds some things, it would like to keep it and preserve it and to protect it. So that is why of the possession, because Mars is kind of a lot of the times it's afraid that what is precious for them will be taken away, and they don't want that because they know how much they would suffer. So it is kind of beautiful in this sense. And well, then more on the superficial level, but people say, oh yeah, Scorpio have resting bitch face can be definitely a thing. And for some people, Scorpio stereotypically are too intense. And it is kind of clear. I mean, it's Mars, the moon is not doing well, and it's just that the sun is very good at dealing with unpleasant emotions, and not everybody likes dealing with, difficult emotions. So it kind of does make sense.
Yeah, and I think it also can be hard for Scorpio. I mean, we're all born as children in this world. And then the world kind of, does things with us. Again, the fates and the fortunes that befall us and the things we have to go through. And um, it's really when Scorpio undergoes the transformative process that then it can really show up. But it can also be overwhelming for like the intensity of the Scorpion can also be intense for the Scorpion
Yeah,
themselves at
indeed.
times. It's hard for them to also deal with many things just because they're like maybe better at it or have or gained like perseverance.
Yeah, it's
d-
still
doesn't
hard.
does Yeah, it's still hard, and like they also became different people in the process. At the end of the day, it wasn't easy, and that's also once again how the possessiveness, or also obsession and things like that can come up, where Scorpio is like, I do not want to go through this ever again, and I will
Mm-hmm.
make sure that. And then the controlling things comes out, like I will make sure that like if I arrange this and this like that, this will never happen again.
Mm-hmm.
um
Indeed, it's yeah. Um, yeah. And it is in the sense that it might feel a little bit, oh, I'm not good in finding the word that I need, but as you well said, it can become so much fixated due to the paranoia. So it can become so much fixated into preventing stuff to happen that somebody can just enter the room and just saying, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing all of this? Why are you worrying so much? Mm, isn't that like being devoured excessively by paranoia? It is something that it can happen to the scorpion. And
yeah.
I think that actually it's when Scorpio act this way, it's because they are kind of moved by fear, if you think about it, because they well know what could happen. And also, a side note, before I was reflecting while I was saying that about the Scorpio, different Scorpio being stereotypized with a resting bitch face. And I was thinking, why can it be the case? And if you think about, again, the moon at its full, the moon can represent emotion, and a moon that does not do well and in a Mars rule sign can kind of make sense that the Scorpio, kind of externate is not very good in externating their emotions and can seem to, too beachy. Like it's the Mars part, the beachy part, I would say, but not externating the emotion they go through. It is something of the moon and its fall, I would say. And I don't know, it's just nice to, see the phenomenon and then reflect on why they are the way they are.
I agree. I mean, I am a Scorpio rising, and
Yeah, yeah.
I've definitely heard that many times. And I'm ruled by Mars. My Mars is in Capricorn, so it's an even more, planned out Mars. But I cannot tell you how many times, people have said to me I looked so calm when I have been like in very big turmoil inside. But again, it's the self-preservation. I'm like,
Hmm.
this is intense. I don't want um this is maybe more Capricornian, but like I don't want to put the burden on people around me. Like it's my like intense emotions to carry and to deal with. And then I rather would look like I'm just like shut down or like I have
Hmm.
resting bitch or something instead of yeah, potentially like wreaking havoc or something, you know. So that's kind of that. And I also want to quickly circle back on the why Scorpio has a hard time trusting. Well, the moon rules fortune.
Hmm.
You have to kind of trust life, and the moon is the planet that moves quickly and changes a lot. And Scorpio is a fixed water sign. And how can you like obviously you would be paranoid because you don't trust the
The
fortune. Like you
change,
don't
yeah.
trust exactly.
Yeah,
So
you don't have faith in humanity and destiny and what's going on as a Scorpio, basically.
yeah, it's that's really where the trust issues can come from a lot of the times.
Hmm.
um, which are probably a bit more solved, when we look at the sign that comes after Scorpio, which is Sagittarius, which is
Yeah,
so much about having faith and putting
yeah.
things into a future and going from the,
And being uplifted.
subjective to the objective and all these things and being more uplifting. So yeah, that's the next part that comes. And it makes obviously so much sense that Sagittarius would be the sign that follows Scorpio, and that we get by the end of this harsh um, autumn season.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, okay, Scorpio, you made everything you could to protect what we have built this far, but now we cannot be stuck in the paranoia mood. We have also to wish and to plan and to think, not planning, but imagine and dream about what we will do when the condition will be good again. Because if we don't have a dream, if we don't have a dream, we won't go anywhere. And Sagittarius is very good at bringing this dream and faith like spirit for future events to be positive and to uplift us. And we also need that because it's kind of proven that, if we don't have a motivation to go through and we just see it feels like positive versus negative thinking, and there are many research about that. And um it's like if you keep with the negative thinking and you don't have any positive thinking, you will be stuck in there forever. And you need to decrease the amount of negative thinking and give more room to the positive thinking, because otherwise you wouldn't find any motivation, you know
Yeah.
And without motivation, we don't go anywhere. We need that as a human being. We need to feel motivated, because if we would remain stuck in Scorpio season forever, it would be living like in a survival mode. Scorpio can also be associated with survival mode, I would say.
Yeah.
And definitely it's not what makes us feel alive.
Yeah, it's the process from Scorpio to Sagittarius is so much about finding the joy again to live outside the grief that we've
Yeah,
experienced, and
indeed.
and what that means when we decide, despite all the harsh conditions, to still let our heart be open and to
Yeah,
not lose our humanity.
indeed. It's so beautiful, right?
Yeah, and what do we need, like what is the one thing you usually need in the beginning? It's having faith in
Mhm.
the process and the journey.
And a
Because
Sag friend.
yeah, because Sagittarius is so much about the journey.
Yeah.
Which kind of concludes, in Pisces when before we start the zodiacal new year again.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's like, what do we need to set out on this journey? Well, it's having faith in the process.
Yes, indeed. And also, if we think about open-hearted and having a warm heart, why don't we jump to the comparison between Scorpio and Leo? And huh, I haven't told it yet, but I have Mars and Venus in Scorpio. And as you think, I'm also a Leo rising, so it's kind of my my paragraph. No, I'm just kidding.
It's
Um,
your paragraph, yeah.
and okay, I'm not kidding. It's serious. Well, again, we are comparing fixed signs, and all the fixed signs are very, very fixed. I know it sounds so bad, but like like we can just shorten it like full light versus full darkness. Like obviously Leo being the full light and Scorpio being the full darkness. And it is a comparison that can be loud because Leo wants to be noticed and wants to be the center of attention, whereas Scorpio is more like a ninja, doesn't like to be seen. Like Leo is more the main lead, and Scorpio is more the person that makes things work behind the stage. But they do have something in common that I think is very beautiful, and I think it's the thirst for truth. But this need of truth and honesty comes from different places. Because if we think about the connection with Leo in the heart, um, Leo wants to connect with the heart of other people, and the nature of the soul, of the earth, of the people cannot be hidden. You fall in love with the real nature of people, not with what they pretend to be. So in this sense, Leo is really in tune with truth, and also thinks of truth as a golden truth. Whereas Scorpio, as we said before, needs truth, bare truth, to feel safe, because truth is permanent and the rest can be changeable. So, it really comes from a different point, this need of truth. But it is very beautiful. And yeah, Scorpio is very good in reminding Leo that maybe we also need truth, not because we want to get to know the beautiful soul of people, but also because then we can be more safe and know what lasts and what's not, and we can protect ourselves. Whereas Leo can teach more to the Scorpio of, being themselves and not being so much on the defense. But do not worry about what could threat you. And that's very beautiful. It's very complementary in this sense.
Definitely. Yeah, Leo is so much about telling Scorpio like, hey, it's like you being you is enough. And in a way, it's almost like if you can fully be yourself, it should make you feel safe.
Yeah,
Um,
indeed.
because that's like the safest thing you can be is to be yourself. Everything else leads to, all the discrepancies and things. But obviously easier said than done. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just like an easy process, like just be yourself. Like everybody says that, but I think it's
Fuck you.
I think it's a lot harder than than you think to just like be yourself, especially with all the things that go on in the world and what the world tells you can or cannot be. And so much of also again, which is a Scorpio process, requires to be able to sit with ourselves in stillness and like let our core reveal itself,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because we kind of forget who we are most of the times, or what our essence is. And that's really where a Scorpio and Leo can be strong together.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, I do agree, and it's very beautiful. Whereas, well, if we take Scorpio and Aquarius, we were saying the other day that it's like putting the most weirdos in the same room, and they created all of the conspiracy theories on Earth. That would be Scorpio and Aquarius. Yeah.
yeah, because they both have the okay, first of all, the luminaries don't do well in either of those signs, so it makes sense. They have more similar values in that sense. And they have, Mars is cutting off and Saturn is
Separate.
isolating or separating. So
Yeah.
they kind of understand each other very well by what makes them outcasts of society.
Yeah, and
um,
also, sorry, just I want to say something real quick about the
mhm,
luminaries is that, there where the luminaries cannot shine because they are in our in bad dignity, the truth and the reality is kind of hidden.
mhm.
And when you don't see clearly, then you you make conspiracy theories or you make up a personal belief. So that is also very beautiful. Like, they don't trust things because they cannot see clearly. There's not the light of the luminaries there, certainly.
Yeah, which is a necessary process, by the way. I just want to emphasize that
Oh yeah.
we don't mean that in a negative way or anything like that.
Yeah, no,
It's not
sure.
it's not like the luminaries are better or anything like that. Um, I think that's actually really where both of them do very well, because they actually remind us, hey, let's not immediately trust everything.
And sometimes we really do need that. That's what we need sometimes. Just not being naive and, think twice
That,
before
yeah.
trusting somebody. And that's really what they do have in common, like not trusting people immediately. And for different reasons, Scorpio is more because he doesn't feel emotionally safe to trust people. And Aquarius, well, it's more being an air sign, obviously, has more that intellectual edge. And it can be more on like, I want to critically examine what people say before trusting or believing it. So it's complete different reason why they don't trust people or society. It's society more in the case of Aquarius, we could say. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and I
it
mean
come.
it's a conspiracy theory, right? So it's a theory. It is not yet proven if it is right or wrong.
Yeah, like
So
Aquarius is the intellectual person that kind of tries to mm, critically analyze societal dynamics. And now Scorpio wants to analyze them just to feel safer. So we can say that Aquarius is more societal oriented and Scorpio is more self-centered or, you know, yeah, self-centered or centered towards who he loves.
yeah, and I mean, how many times do you also hear, like, from Scorpios, like, oh, actually you were right about not trusting that.
Yeah.
So it's like it's okay to have the theories. They can also be proven to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it is a theory in the beginning, and you kind of need time to see that. And Scorpio just has a really, really big radar. And it's true, sometimes it is not correct, but oftentimes it can be. And then
Mm-hmm.
people are thankful that Scorpio was actually a good warning sign, just as Aquarius too.
Yes,
But it's
indeed.
more like, put both of them together. It can be like, it can be very critical. They could potentially feed each other like false information, and then really start believing things that have no real like ground or actuality.
Indeed,
So
indeed,
that's just
indeed.
kind of what can happen. It's a square at the end of the day. Um,
No,
but
that
again,
sounds
they
funny.
really, yeah, but again, they really do both well of I mean, I'm just thinking of many, like I usually engage pretty well with people with Aquarius placements. I do also have Jupiter in Aquarius, I must say that. But it
Yeah,
just feels so much, I really get
same.
along with people that like are critical thinkers, or that or like that have like peculiar interests that are not really common. Like it just really, really fascinates me when somebody likes music or movies. And I mean, for me too, I always liked more specific like cult movies, like indie movies, not movies about cults. I guess everybody know what that means.
Well,
Uh,
that could be also Scorpio
also
things.
Aquarius. Uh, but you know, these things, I think it's so interesting. And that's really where Scorpio and Aquarius kind of can find the common ground. They can be a bit of like, you know, if it's a love story, it can very much be the couple that is like us against the world, us against society, type of thing.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And if we compare Scorpio with the water sign and we begin with Cancer, I kind of do like this comparison because the moon is in its in her fallen Scorpio, and Mars is in detriment in Cancer. So both of them carry Moon Mars signature, just in the opposite way. And they are both very, very self-protective about their emotions. We can just say that, well, Cancer is obviously sweeter. It's more of a it's more of a caretaker, and well, also Scorpio is a caretaker, but you know, Cancer is more providing emotional nourishment, and Scorpio is more providing emotional security and make the other person feel safe to open up, I would say. And you know, it's it's just they are both very protective. In this sense, they are very, very similar, but also for different reasons.
Yeah, they have the, even if we look at the symbols of the animals,
Mm-hmm.
Cancer has the shell, the protective shell, right? So here you have it to both animals that are very protective in their respective ways.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. I would just say that obviously also if Cancer is more of a emotional nourisher person, well, Scorpio is way more good in fighting and protecting, like in fights. Obviously, Cancer has more problem in standing up for what they want or what they want to protect. They are more passive aggressive, and Scorpio are more for protecting physically or verbally what and who they love.
Yeah, they can both go very deep. I think they could, like on an emotional level, they can kind of understand each other at a similar level, even if it might not be the same emotions, but just the comprehension that you can feel something so deeply. That is what they kind of have in common.
Yeah, yeah, indeed, indeed. And if we instead compare Scorpio with Pisces, well, it feels similar to Scorpio and Sagittarius, just in a water sign, because Pisces, of course, is ruled by Jupiter and it is the exaltation of Venus. So, Pisces is the definition of optimism and wishful thinking and dreamlike imagination. And so this means that Pisces is not really on the self-defense mode as Scorpio. And but I do think that they do very well together because they can teach themselves so many good things. For example, Pisces can teach the Scorpio how to follow the flow and enjoy the moment instead of being paralyzed in a paranoia. And Scorpio can also teach a little bit to the little Pisces how to protect themselves a little bit more and how to be more careful and less naive because the word could hurt them. So I think that the interaction can be very, very conducive, and Obviously, also they are both, I would say that both are able to go very, very deep. And both of these signs are very good in um they are very good friends when it's all about opening up with emotions. I feel that those friends are the friends that can support you emotionally, just in different way. If Scorpio tells you more the bare truth and wants you to face hard emotions, Pisces will welcome you and cuddle you and try to make you uplift. So it's different modality, but sometimes we do need both. In different stages, we might need a Scorpio that reminds us what sucks and what's dangerous. Whereas in other moments, we just need Pisces and we just need a hug. We just need to believe that things will be better. We do need both. And those are, I would say, different kind of emotional support that are quite fundamental.
Yeah, I'm just the example that popped into my head right now is just that Scorpio could kind of be more like a drill sergeant,
Yeah.
and then Pisces is more like a motivational coach or something like
Yeah.
that. Like
Actually, very fitting.
positive thinking and imagination, which is so necessary, by the way. And then Scorpio is obviously much more better at letting you push through,
Mhm, mhm.
and giving you also the motivation in a way, but it's more like a bit of tough love,
Yeah,
that's
it's
also
it's
what's
definitely tough love.
yeah, it's a bit what the Scorpio and Capricorn kind of have in common, which by no surprise, right? Mars is exalted in Capricorn, but yeah, that's really what um Pisces and Scorpio kind of have in common. And it's also interesting how if you just think at if you look at the water sign trio,
Hmm.
you have I mean, despite Mars not doing well in Cancer, the Cancer is still protected by its shell.
Yeah,
Scorpio has its protective stinger. A Pisces, like a fish, it like it doesn't have any protection.
that is
It's
true.
just
That is
like
true.
in the vast ocean. So it kind of really needs both Cancer and Scorpio
Protect.
to ha- to protect. And again, on the other side, therefore Pisces can be like, oh hey, what happens if we go with the flow? If you're just in the wide open ocean, but it's
Yeah,
really also where the naivety of Pisces can
yeah,
sometimes come because
indeed.
there is no
Emotional
protection.
boundaries.
Yep.
Yeah, and I also, yeah, I just want to point out that if you think about the shell of both Cancer and Scorpio, I think that the takeaway lesson should be that we do need emotional boundaries. We do need to self-protect.
Mhm.
And Pisces, yeah, might not be very good in setting emotional boundaries that are just genuinely healthy.
Yeah, it's good at other things. That is not
Hmm.
one of them.
Indeed. Yeah. And if we think about the organ rulership, well, we kind of mentioned it before that it rules over the sexual organ and the reproductive system, but it also rules over the large intestine, the sacral area in general, so also the anus and, well, the other stuff there, and the bladder. And yeah, obviously, also the bladder is kind of important for expelling substance and waste, especially because, yeah, if feces are what we did not absorb, then the urine, it's more the metabolic process of what we absorb that otherwise would be toxic. So in a way, we pee to expel our toxins. And I think it's very Scorpio like clean and just expel the toxin, expel what you don't need. Otherwise, it could be unhealthy for you. So if you
Yeah,
think about
and
it, it's very Scorpio like.
it's for Scorpio like, and also the fact that the kidneys, which are very important for that,
Yeah.
are
Indeed.
ruled by Libra,
Yeah, it's a
which
succession.
it's a succession truly, and Libra also rules over the the hormonal system, which again, where the balancing act comes out. So in a way,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, you need to balance out the hormones so the kidneys can function properly, so that you
Yeah,
can
everything.
excrete the
The
right stuff.
stuff.
Exactly. So that is interesting. And again, then also where Aries, the other Mars sign, comes into play, which rules about like the adrenal glands and everything, the
Oh
stress
yeah.
hormones, right? So
Yeah,
you can see
indeed.
how it is all connected in our bodies too.
Also with the astrological symbolism. It's very beautiful and poetic indeed.
Exactly. Yeah, the like astrology and medicine were actually really hand in hand, for a very, very long time until
Mm-hmm.
it kind of gradually got separated. And it's really what you can see once you study more like the ancient text, just how vital it was to, like, if you were a doctor or a medicine person, to know astrology.
Yeah, because well, the symbolism of astrology is based on an archetypal principle. And they didn't call it archetypes, they call it more like ideas. But those archetypes, the idea behind those archetypes is that they are reflected in every single piece of our life, as above, so below. So therefore, also in our bodies. And it does make sense. And it's very beautiful and fascinating, how multifaceted the astrological system can be.
Definitely is. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think with that we concluded our Scorpio
episode.
episode.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. We will see each other next month with the Sagittarius episode. And thank you so much for listening. We wish you a nice and lovely day. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for listening and bye.